Whether you're new to real estate or have done over 100 deals, you're always looking for funding for your next deal. And today's guest, Erik Eichinger of iFundCities, comes on and brings us a really great breakdown of hard money and how new investors can get started. This is the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast, episode 199, and I am your host, Chris Rickenbaugh. I am documenting my journey in real estate and business and also bringing on high-level investors to share their stories and about how they built their businesses. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at chris.rickenbaugh. That's chris.REICHENBACH. There, you can follow along on my journey and on my posts. And if you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much, and leave us a like, rating, and review wherever you're listening to this episode. That is the only way we can grow and help more investors get started, get more knowledgeable about this real estate space and business. We have some really great guests coming up in today's episode I'm really excited about. So let's get to Erik. All right, Erik Eichinger, welcome to the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast. Pumped to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I've been following the show for a little bit, and you've had some awesome guests, learned a lot from it. So it's an honor to be asked to do it and really excited for today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll let you give a little bit of background on yourself. You run CLT REI, you work for iFundCities, which we're going to be breaking down, kind of like some different loan details for people that are getting started in real estate or they've done 200 deals before. So I want to I want to break down a little bit about your background first, and then we can get into what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'll try not to jump around too much, but definitely answer a little bit about me and who I am. Talk about the meetup, CLT REI, and then
Yeah.
we'll wrap up with iFundCities and kind of transition to there. But born and raised in Philadelphia, which is where iFundCities was founded, and how I connected with the founders there. Wanted to get into sales, but didn't really know how. I was competitive basketball player for my whole life, played in college and played overseas in Ireland for a little bit, and was missing that kind of competitive spirit and drive after the real world set in, as everybody
Yeah,
knows. So
for sure.
I started bartending, which little did I know was going to dramatically strengthen some things in terms of relationships and management with people, and meeting different types of people where they're at, and listening, and all skills that are super important in sales down the line. And didn't realize I was building those blocks. So I was bartending and coaching high school basketball for a while. As you can imagine, those two salaries don't really allow you to invest in real estate too much, unless you're doing it creatively, and always had a passion for real estate, right? Like, I was always been the guy on vacation that when my family wants to go to the pool or an adventure, I just kind of want to drive around the city and look at different kind of houses and things like that. So I loved real estate. It's a scary world to jump into, and you don't really know where to start. So it was one of those passions that I kind of put on the back burner and said, maybe one day when I have a lot of money, I can become a real estate investor. Simultaneously of this happening, me, wrapping up college and playing basketball, two friends of mine in Philadelphia had started a company surrounded by hard money lending, which was iFund Philly and turned out to be iFundCities. And I was just kind of following them along. And I make a joke to them all the time. It's like when your friends start a business together, you kind of want to see it take off the ground before you throw everything away and join them. And I was like kind of watching from afar, cheering for them. But I was like, let me see if this thing actually has some legs to it before inquiring about joining or helping them. And they did it, and they became very successful in Philadelphia. And that, combined with my interest to get into real estate, at our company at iFundCities, it's not a traditional mortgage brokerage, so there was no license requirement, there was no studying I needed to do, and didn't really have an interest in being an agent or contractor or anything like that. So I was introduced to this world of hard money lending and saw how quick I could get into the game, and we can push this for a little bit further about how I started there and the journey to becoming an investor myself. But the basketball part really shaped me from a competitiveness and wanting to find a team, and sales gave me that itch of competing and winning and losing, and really it was a great home for me. So born and raised in Philadelphia, stayed there for a while, and moved back home after college and everything. Transition to iFundCities. I'll kind of just get into the start there.
Yeah,
And feel free to
yeah.
ask anything more,
Yeah, for sure.
personally. Yeah.
And I think it's cool to see because we see a lot of athletes end up getting into real estate and sales, and it's like it's that competitive drive that kind of drives you there. And then, where does sales lead you from there? Like we've heard some really cool stories about NFL players in the city that start investing in real estate, and it's kind of that still competitive nature. So that's cool to hear. And then you mentioned you do or we talked a little bit before, but you said you're getting your first rental, and then you've done a couple fix and flips yourself, and now you're starting on a new build. So you do have that experience. And so when you first started working for iFundCities, like how did that develop into, getting comfortable underwriting deals and being able to really see the opportunities in the market?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think a lot of wholesalers can relate to me on this level is when you're underwriting some deals or from a wholesaler perspective, assigning them, and you're looking at them and you look at the numbers and, you make a nice little, penny or something, you assign a deal, or me if I close a loan or something, and then you dig into what the investor actually is going to make, right? And
Oh
I
yeah.
think wholesalers can understand that. But I started to get curious of like, underwriting a deal, whether it be a fix and flip or new construction. And then I'd look at the bottom line, we'd get the appraisal back, and I'd be like, wow, this guy's going to make X amount of money on this. Like, that's pretty damn cool. I'm making a tenth of that originating the loan, and the wholesaler is making a little bit of money too. So I think, financially, that's what piqued my interest a little bit. And like, hey, I want to learn how to do this successfully. And my job couldn't have given me a better platform to learn, right? So we were speaking a little bit before, but you get offered a contract for a job at a lender, and it just says, you need to sell loans and train and educate and do all this kind of stuff. What it doesn't say, and what should be in the fine print, is you get an opportunity to talk to high level investors every single day that are doing this successfully, and staying on the phone with them for a couple minutes after you talk about the active deal that they may have, right? So an example I used is we're pricing out a DSCR for somebody who has 100 rental properties. We quote out the deal and they say, we'll take a look and get back to me. And then who's to say I can't ask a question or two on, hey, how are you identifying areas to invest in? What kind of rental strategies are you using? Talk to me about how property management affects the bottom line, right? Things that like I kind of take my lender hat off for a little bit and start asking as an investor. And I just learned a ton my first year or two doing that. Talking to successful people while quote unquote being on the clock too, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
still doing my lending job at the end of the day. So with anything, I'm the first person to be, judgmental on the fact of like, you gotta just jump into it and try it, when I was the one that was the analysis by paralysis. So it's so easy for me to say at meetups and talking to people, you just got to do one, you got to do
Hmm.
one. Yet it took me 2 years to do my first one, which I, kicking myself for. But it sounds super cliched, but there's no way to really learn how to be a successful real estate investor without doing it, right? And I've looked at 1,000 Excel sheets over the past 2 years. Still, I learned more from doing my first real estate investment project myself than underwriting 1,000 deals. So um, that's my piece of advice going forward for people that are listening to this, that like you've heard it from everybody, and I sound like that old guy at the corner of the bar saying you got to go do it, but like you really do have to just jump into it to learn.
It,
And I've had a lot of good partners along the way and things like that. But back to your original question, the structure and environment of being a lender forced me into being an investor. And I'll say this last piece about it too is I do think to be a high level lender, you do have to be an investor yourself, because I think our company's slogan is built by investors for investors. And once you start wearing the lens of an investor when underwriting deals and not just the lender, you understand a lot more how the investor thinks and how to best support them. And it's a tagline that a lot of lenders use, like we're investors ourselves, but I truly mean it, right? I do invest in deals. I'm almost competing on the sidelines with some of our investors that are doing deals with me, right? They don't know that I'm taking a look at it for myself personally as well. But I think that's important, that I can say that I am also an investor when I try to work for new partnerships on the lending platform.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And to touch on the point you made, taking action for, all those new investors, analysis by paralysis. We've all had conversations with them, and one of the number one things is, well, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to fail. And being able to take that first step is the only way you're going to learn. I mean, even if you make mistakes, if you're taking that as a learning lesson, you're going to be so much farther along because even not really on like the residential real estate side. Yesterday, I had a conversation where we broke down buying a hotel. And that was, something you're interested in, and you just don't know what you don't know. So being able to run through that with somebody who's done it before, I mean, hey, ask these questions. Hey, look at this. Here's the numbers you're looking for, and here's your return. Just being able to have those conversations with people who have done it before, and it could be your lending team. They're going to be able to say, "Hey, I found this deal. What are some of the questions I need to ask before I actually go through this purchase?" So, yeah, just wanted to touch on that point before we really dove into it. But as for iFundCities in general, I want to break down deals that you guys typically fund
Yeah.
and where and how you're underwriting these deals to see if first if that investor qualifies to be able to use you guys and work with you, or if their deal qualifies. So we can start
Absolutely. And I promise I won't do this too much, but I want to
there.
jump
You're
back
all
to the
good.
last point just for 1 second to put a bow on it. That fail forward mentality of taking the leap is so important, and not just for investing too. I was fortunate enough to be asked to train a couple of our new loan officers the other day, and I gave them this message and they kind of chuckled at me, but like the fail forward mindset of like how I learned to become the lender that I'm capable of being today. There's every single deal in real estate. There's no two deals that are the same. Everyone that does that know that, right? Like there's, everything's going to look a little bit different. And the way I learned was by, messing up certain deals along the way, my first couple months, my first year or so, to the point where you almost you hate, like, as a lender, the number one biggest thing is like changing terms, right? You never want to change terms. You want to honor what you promised the client. And there was an unfortunate moments in the first couple months, and I've been doing this for about 5 years now, where I had to call somebody and say, "Hey, I found out we actually don't lend in this area," or when I underwrote your fix and flip deal, I didn't put a contingency into it, little things like that.
Mhm.
And it's covered in training, and you read it in a manual when you join a company and stuff like that. But the lessons I've learned from quote unquote failing have really made me into the loan officer I am now, where I've come across every scenario that it's like nothing really scares me anymore. And I know, to practice that utmost transparency up front of like, hey, just so you know, here's what I'm seeing on this deal that might cause a little bit of problems down the line. And I want to be transparent about that. So I was telling the trainees that like I can sit here and try to coach you guys and teach you guys, but in terms of failing fast, like you got to get out there. You're going to do loans. You're going to mess up a little bit. How do we help mitigate the mess up, right? Like not to the point where we've got to not close a deal, but where, hey, the 10-year treasury moved a bit so that the DSCR interest rate is going to be a little bit higher. How do we have that conversation up front that, hey, these terms aren't set in stone, or these are, you know what I mean? So I can give them all these like situations to look out for, but until they start doing loans and failing forward, they're not going to be able to learn the business because being in a little bubble in real estate, you're not going to be able to be successful. You've got to take bumps, you've got to take losses, and everyone says that anyone that says they never have just hasn't done it long enough or successfully enough. You know what I mean? So
100%.
I really think that fail forward mentality is like it's really scary. Me and you are sitting in a warm office right now talking
Yeah.
about this, and it's scary to go do it. But I promise you, the mistakes you learn. I'm full of the cliche sayings today, but you win or you learn, right? I don't look at it as win or losing. You win or you learn, and I think that's really important for any aspect, whether it's being lending, an investor, a wholesaler. Is you win or learn. So I just wanted to highlight that. I thought
Yeah.
that was really important in terms of our company and what we're looking for, right? I say this when you're looking for financing on deals outside of creative, right? Creative,
Yep.
there's seller financing, subject to, it's any, you name it, right? Anything you can, two people come to a negotiation, you can do whatever you want in terms of creative financing. But there's typically three avenues of finding financing on deals, and that's doing it in cash, right? There's finding a bank, or there's finding some sort of alternative lending, and that's what we fall under. That's going to be your hard money, your private money, your institutionalized money. So of those three buckets, cash obviously is going to juice the highest amount of ROI for you. You're not borrowing, you don't have interest costs, you don't have closing costs. However, if cash was infinite, there would be no need for banks and lenders and things like that. So that puts a scalability problem on investors, that they can only do so many deals if they do it in cash, right? So that's where you look for leverage and outside financing. Then you break down to bank financing versus alternative financing. Bank, always going to have the cheapest cost of capital, right? We don't sit here and market or get on the phone and say, I'm going to be cheaper than banks. I think we've closed the gap a lot more in the past couple of years, but from a private credit industry as a whole, where it used to, there's probably a wider difference in bank pricing versus hard money pricing. But the problem with banks is, if they were easy to work with, we also wouldn't exist, right? So banks, the documentation that's needed, the timeline that they move at in real estate investing, especially in Charlotte, you got to move fast. You know what I mean? There's deals that come up, and you got to close quick, or you got to get answers quick, or you got to price out quickly. And everyone knows the banking process is antiquated, right? There's a lot of committees that you have to wait to hear from, in underwriters guidelines, where if you're offering a property with bank financing behind you, and somebody might be a little bit undercutting you, but they can close 4 times faster than you can, most agents and wholesalers are going to go with the person that can close fastest, because the time and power of money now is probably more than it is in the future. So bank financing, cheaper cost of capital, much slower, much more red tape, much more documentation. And that's where you find your hard money lenders that have really, really risen in market share when it comes to working with investors the past couple of years. And that's because it's, higher leverage, quicker turnaround times, low documentation, and different kinds of like structuring, right? Like back to putting the lens of the investor paramount. Like, hard money lenders should be thinking like investors, right? Where banks should be thinking like banks. They got to worry about like your depository relationships with them, the collateral, you as an individual, from a holistic creditworthiness standpoint. Where hard money lenders, also called like asset-based lenders, are really just like individually underwriting the deal. Is there enough meat on the bone or profit that you can walk away with some cash, pay back the lender, have multiple exit strategies, all those kinds of good things you look for. So that's where a company like iFundCities came into existence. It was people don't have an infinite amount of cash, so they need leverage to scale, and they need debt. Banks are becoming increasingly consolidated and tougher to work with. How do we provide working capital fast for experienced real estate investors? And there's a lot of companies like us out there, and we're well aware of how competitive it is. And you got to stand out to be different. So we try to do that the best we can. But that's how the necessity for our product came to be. And then to answer your question on who we're looking for and who we work with. I'm more of a tell a story type of person than a checking a boxes type of person, if that analogy makes sense. So where the banks are going to say, do you hit this minimum credit score? Do you have this percentage cash on cash return? Do you have et cetera, et cetera? I'm more looking for, hey, tell me a story. So give me a call and say, hey, I fixed a couple houses in this area. My wife's a realtor. She ran comps. I got a contractor that I've, quoted out some bids with. I really trust this individual. Like, when you say that to me on an initial phone call versus, hey, Eric, I found you online and I need a loan, there is a stark difference on what comfortability level we're going to get, right? So we like seeing people that have teams assembled, systems and processes in place. And even if it's your first project, right? But you've spent the due diligence and research assembling your team, which everybody should do when they're jumping into this, right? Should be interviewing contractors, interviewing lenders, interviewing agents, should build up a team before kind of jumping in. But that's what we're looking to hear when we're connecting with individuals that are looking for financing, is less of a check the box exercise and more of a, hey, just, in your own words, us talking casually, tell me why this deal makes sense. And that's how we can get comfortable with it being a completely privately owned lender that can make discretionary decisions on what we lend on and what we don't.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because that's where a lot of first-time investors are. Whether, it's your first deal or your 100th, but the first deal is always going to be the hardest, because you're taking that leap. And most of the time I've had people say, "Oh my gosh, I have this deal, like take a look at it." And it's like, "Okay, what's the address?" And they're like, "Oh, well shoot, I don't know that." Yeah, those aren't you got to do a little bit of due diligence. I mean, being able to filter through that because, your job, Eric, is to be able to, filter through this deal as well. Like, hey, what are the comps? What's your renovation costs? If you're doing a full gut rehab and you're saying, hey, I only need 30 grand, it's probably not going to work. So being able to, have those guidelines, like I've worked with different contractors. They're like, hey, 45 bucks a square foot for the inside. And if you're doing everything on the outside, you're more like 60 to 75. And those are easy guidelines to go to and then say, hey, here's the numbers that I ran. Here's the comps. Here's what needs to be done to the property. And here's my renovation costs that I'm looking at it needs. And then that's where you go to Eric and say, hey, this is all that information. And here's what we're going to do with it. And it sounds like that's the best place to start for a first time investor. So, once you get past that first part, hey, they've sent you the deal, it looks good. Where do you start that underwriting process to see, okay, can we fund this deal?
Yeah, and I do. I'm not going to lie and say I'm an Excel wizard who has these like insane formulas to calculate all these deals. A lot of the time, we've got a pro forma that we underwrite, and we lean on the appraisal a lot too. And you know, people don't. That's the scary word sometimes for people because appraisers are kind of, all over the place and
Oh, yeah.
and they carry a lot of value in this industry. And what number they put on a piece of paper drives a lot of financial decisions and underwriting risk. But from there, I'm more of just like a back of the envelope type math guy. So I love all of the um, call what you want the guru formulas, right? Where it's like take 70% of the ARV and subtract out the budget, and that's how you get max allowable offer price, or the 1% rule for renting out. Like I think they're not be all end all, but they're really nice tools for just quickly phasing out what actually has some legs to it here. So we do some basic underwriting, and then we will dive into the experience, right? So we'll say, okay, it seems like you've got a profitable deal here. So the deal numbers make sense. Step two of that is analyzing, have you done this successfully before? If you have, it's a lot easier conversation on getting approved, getting funding out there. And if you haven't, that's where it's like, how does the lender protect itself from a first time investor? And there's certain nuances you can put into the loan, such as doing lower leverage, requiring a first time investor to have more quote unquote skin in the game? Or do you prepay some of the interest payments up front? Or do you partner with one of our approved contractors that we've done deals with before, right? So that's part of like building out the ecosystem and being able to refer individuals to different partners in the business. And a lot of the time, not to jump over too much, but like if you're really really good at something, you can find the other piece of what you need in a real estate equation. And a lot of times it's either boiled down to deals or capital, right? So if you're somebody that has some private capital sitting on the side, but you want to jump in, I promise you there's investors that have a lot of deals right now that would love to partner on something. Or if you're really good at finding off market deals or wholesaling and you want to jump into it, I guarantee you there's people with money out there looking to invest. So a lesson in that is when you're jumping into this, and this is directly coming from a lender that approves financing on real estate deals, like don't be afraid to sacrifice a little bit of profit to get going under your first deal, second deal, third deal for the learning experiences, right? I don't think there's many investors out there. This is speaking to wholesalers directly. I don't think that there's many investors out there that wouldn't say, hey, why don't we partner on this deal potentially? Instead of you assigning it to me for a certain amount of price, why don't we split some equity at the back end? You lock it up for the direct to seller price that you have. The buyer's buying it at the quote unquote discounted rate because there's not an assignment fee on it. And the wholesaler just gets to learn from an investor being hands-on of doing it before. I've got a lot of examples of loans we closed recently where wholesaler partnered with investor, and it's turning out great. And then the wholesaler comes back to me after that deal's complete, and they don't need the investor anymore, right? They've got executed deals holding title, which carries a lot of weight in our industry for experience. So from a high level point of view, don't look directly to what am I making on this first deal. Look at what am I going to learn and how is that going to further me as a real estate investor. I didn't make a penny on the first deal I did. You know what I mean? It was a builder that we had closed a couple loans with up in Hickory, North Carolina. I came across a lot. So in that situation, I was the person that had the deal, not the money. And I said, hey, I could assign this property to you, or I could, sell it to you, and then you could come to our company and do the loan, whatever it may be. But I got a different idea. What if we partner on it? You take the majority of the profit. The price that I'm getting it for, I can lock it up for. No need to make an assignment fee or anything like that. And I really just want to learn as much as I can. And I, drove up to Hickory twice a week, learned how to do fix and flip and renovations and manage a budget and contractors and project managers and interest payments and all that kind of hands-on stuff. And I didn't make a dollar. But if I walked to the next bank after that and said, hey, I flipped the house successfully already and we made profit on it, they're going to look at me as a candidate to get higher leverage and lower rates because I had one under my belt, rather than me searching for a partner that was going to give me the most equity out of my first deal. That's not what I was looking for. So just a message on that as you take the leap into it, like, please, for the sake of the futuristic opportunities, bottom line profit is not the most important thing on a first deal. It helps cycle the capital to do deals number 2, 3, and 4. So I'm not saying jump into a deal you're going to lose money on just to learn, but maybe sacrifice a little to bring the right partners along. That's going to give you a more like bankable profile going forward.
110%. I think that's the best information for a first time buyer. So, and you get to meet a lot of these guys at the meetup you host, CLT REI, with you and Jarrett, and now you and Anthony, the two tallest guys in Charlotte, are going to be hosting the meetup. So, yeah, and this is cool because it comes from a place of the learning, because you're having conversations with these guys all the time, all these wholesalers that are locking up these deals. Normally they're pretty new to the game and they don't know this funding. So, this is a great episode for the first time wholesalers that are looking to get started into the flipping and understand the funding, because they're going to be able to have a better conversation with you to begin with. But it's cool to see the experience that you have, because you have this conversation probably 10 times a day. So, but I did want to pivot because I think that's a great point for the first time investors. But, for these guys who have been flipping for a while, they have somebody that they've been using, but they're starting to look at, hey, who else can we work with in the city? What would you say to somebody that's doing, 100 deals? They have the experience under their belt and now they're looking to begin working with you. What are some of those conversations you're having as of terms, interest rates? What are they exactly looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let's get back to the meetup after this, because I do want to talk
for
about
sure.
that. And it's
100%.
power in Charlotte. But yeah, I got to dust off the old sales pitch here is what I got to do when I'm talking to these investors. But the main core of what I tell people that I'm looking to partner with on deals moving forward is I don't think there's a person, humbly, like in Charlotte, that's of my position of the lending platform that is a connector of people. And the meetup helps with that a lot, right? So I really only do loans in markets that I'm very comfortable with, whether it be Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, Raleigh. I'm not cold calling too many people in Omaha, Nebraska, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin, saying, hey, I saw you did 100 deals. I'd love to partner. Like, I'm sure they're great investors and they'd be great business for us, but I wouldn't be a man of my word of like, I want to be a local industry expert and connector people when I call these high level individuals, right? So I think they enjoy working with somebody local that can meet them at a job site, refer them to somebody that can help them find deals. If their contractor is getting tied up, referring to them another contractor. So I really hone in on the fact that, like, being here for the past 5 years, being fortunate to close a lot of business, I've met a ton of people in this industry, and I love getting calls just as much as, hey, can you fund, saying, hey, Eric, the person I met at the meetup the other night, can you loop us in a text? They seem like a great resource for my business, right? So I try to, like, not just be a transactional partner, but more of just like a member of people's team, whether it's a second set of eyes underwriting a deal. Like, I've told people before, like, hey, this is who I'm currently working with on the new construction side, but this is a build to rent investor per se. And I'd say, hey, what do you got going on the funding side on the new construction? I'd keep rolling with that. Like, but what I would love to do is, I think I got a better option for you on the refinances to do the DSCR loans or something like that. So it serves me no purpose to tell somebody I can do better interest rate wise, leverage wise, origination fee wise, and then change the terms as we talked about earlier. because that person won't want to work with me again. And you know how small the Charlotte real estate space is. Like if I wasn't a man of my word and we did exactly what we said we were going to do, I'd be posted on a Facebook group pretty soon. You know what I mean? Of like, hey, this reputation that I have of executing and being the lender that I am is taking 5 years to build, and it would take 5 minutes to lose. You know what I mean?
For
So
sure.
I think it's important to act with integrity and do what you say you're going to do, and that's kind of the bar for lending right now. So I really try to and always looking to take on more partners, right? Like I am at the point where I am obsessed with growing this lending platform in Charlotte. And I think we've got the bandwidth to take on a lot more business. And we're constantly hiring and training and improving our systems and teams and things like that. So for those investors that you alluded to that are doing 100 deals a year, it's really, if they're in Charlotte, I'd love to try to meet them and do business with them just based on the fact that, I can walk out to a job site, meet them, which a lot of nationwide lenders are just calling them from New York, California, Chicago, whatever it may be, where it's like, at the end of the day, as our world gets more tech and AI driven, I still think people crave human relationships, and that's the basis of trust. So me being able to like shake somebody's hand, bring coffee to their contracting crews, or show up to their closing, that stuff still means a lot in terms of relationships. And it's the reason I keep going, right? If it was just pick up a phone, do a loan, pick up a phone, do a loan, like I'd get burnout really quickly. So it's the people that we work with that keep me going and keep me energized. So for those high level investors, it's just let me show you all the tools at my disposal from being here for a long time. And if the loans come, they come. You know what I mean? That's great. That's the cherry on top. But let me just be an extension of your business in some way at the beginning to try to fit in on your team and grow your business. So, and not to shade the newer investor or anything, but it's absolutely true that those individuals and investors that have done a ton of business successfully get some sort of preferential terms, right? And that's just like how anything goes in life. You know what I mean? So I do think like the down payment percentage we require with somebody that's done 0 deals is not going to look the same as someone that's done 100. You know what I mean? So
Right.
sometimes you do have to get a little bit more aggressive when somebody's working with other lenders to try to compete with what they're currently getting. It's sales at the end of the day. It's not just all like kumbaya. I like Erik, I want to do business. The numbers still have to make sense at the end of the day. So, and the last point to that for those investors, and I hesitate to say this almost because I'd love to just be everyone's preferred lender, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So you should have a diversified set of lenders that you're working with. And I joke to people when I say that, hey, like the more lenders competing for your business is only a better thing for you as an investor, right? Because we all want to get you the best interest rate possible, make successions for doing deals and things like that. So I tell people, I kind of raise an eyebrow. And like when someone says, hey, I'm only exclusively working with X, Y, and Z, what if something were to happen? It's a volatile industry, right? Like, what if their capital sources were to dry up? What if your loan officer you talked to took another job? So I do, maybe it doesn't have to be 50-50, but it's nice to have an established set of relationships with a couple different lenders in your tool belt just to diversify risk a little bit. And I always say, the product diversity set that we offer is something to take note of as well when vetting out other lenders, where it's like we can do fix and flip, new construction, Airbnbs, rentals, like land deals, bridge, things like that. And I say all that to say you might have somebody that's just doing fix and flip right now, and they might got a great product for that's better than what I can offer. And I'd say that's great, but do you have envisions of getting into new construction? Do you ever want to hold properties? Like you're growing with a lender that can only support you're doing fix and flip. Maybe it makes sense to open that door and start a conversation with a lender that can help transition you from fix and flip into new construction, or get into buy and hold, or different types of like real estate investment projects. Or maybe you want to do commercial. So like in the next year or two, you brought up hotels. If that's something somebody's business has an idea or mindset they want to go to, it's never too early to start establishing commercial lending relationships or talk to people that lend on hotels. You know what I mean? So it's not a cold intro when you've got a live deal for the first time. It's, oh, we've worked together. Oh, I know Chris. He always is successful in fix and flips. Why not? Let's give him a chance at new construction. He's got the team built where that other lender who's only doing 100% of your fix and flip might not offer that product. So rather than starting new with another lender, you've got that existing relationship already.
Yeah, 100%. Love all that. So I got one more question before, or topic we can dive into before we hop off here. But CLT REI. So you guys, host one of the biggest meetups in Charlotte. I go to that one almost monthly, and it just seems to keep growing. You've had massive guests on. Mike Termini was just on. You have local Marissa Boyle. You've had Eric Klein on before. So being able to bring in those massive guests, it's just so much value you guys are giving. And now it was with Jarrett Jackson, who we've had on the podcast. And now Anthony Swain, who's also been on the podcast, is going to be joining you up there. So yeah, shout out to CLT REI and what you guys are doing out there. So yeah, do you guys have anything super cool coming up? I know one of the meetups here, it should be this next week on the 29th.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So, Mike, Cash Money Mike, by the way, is the man. I'm so lucky that Jared introduced me to him. He's an awesome guy for anyone that's looking for somebody to follow or pick their brains. He's an incredible guy. But just on CLT REI real quick, I have to give all the flowers in the world to Jared. Jared started it. He built the audience, and he really built the culture around it, which is just, we didn't care if there was one person in the room or 100. We just wanted somebody to leave there with a little bit of knowledge that they didn't know before, some action steps, and be excited about real estate investing. So he really set the tone and the environment for that. And I was lucky enough for him to ask me to sponsor a couple years ago. And I guess, I don't mind being behind a microphone at all. So I probably talked a little bit too long on my sponsorship when I had the chance to talk to people, or stole the mic one too many times, where he was like, if you're going to keep doing that, why don't you just join me up here as a co-host? So Jared's the best. And although he's stepping outside of the co-hosting role, he's still, 100% part of the CLT REI family. He's the founder. It'll always be his. And when I was looking for someone to join me as a co-host up there, it's going to be impossible to replace Jared, but I thought of Anthony right away. And Anthony's a good friend of mine. He's also a Philadelphia Eagles fan, which is some points in my book, being from Philly. But
oh man,
yeah. Sorry to bring that up at this point.
I'm a Browns fan, so yeah, we don't have much positivity over here.
Yeah, no bad blood between our two teams, thankfully. But yeah, Anthony is just somebody that is was a supporter from day one, which we thank you yourself for coming to these events. It means the world. But Anthony's someone that's been showing up all the time. He's got incredible energy, well respected. Tons of integrity. Like he's a really great guy, and that's something that I look for more important than is he the biggest investor, the biggest agent. He's a really good person that wants to help people, and that's what our mission is all about. So he was a natural fit, and he's got a great audience and following on the agent side, which I don't have. Right, you know what I mean? I'm currently working with a ton of investors and know some other lenders and builders and things like that. But, being in the investment space, if agents aren't, that quote unquote investor focus, we probably don't cross paths that much in the lending business. So he's opening up our audience and world to another completely different segment that we didn't really tap into before. And he's just going to be an incredible person for it. So, CLT REI goes back to my personal mission, almost, that we were talking about earlier, of I don't just want to be a lender that you pick up the phone, call, and get a loan and hang up. I need the authenticity of the relationships, and CLT REI brings a lot of iFundCities partners and clients along, and with some potential ones, and people that will never do business with, that are just great people to have in the room. So it's what I'm all about, is I do the job for those nights, right? For those nights where everyone can come in the building and meet and network and leave with a new connection or a possible new deal. That's what fills my cup up personally at this point in my career. So super thankful that Jared entrusted me with carrying the torch. Anthony's going to do great. And we're both just kind of re-energized about making this the premier event in Charlotte. So anyone that's listening, please stop by. We just launched a new Instagram page at CLT_REI. It'll have all the dates. We have the same venue up at Heist Brewery, and we're, always looking for new people to come and get something out of it. And back to your point of newer investors, we want to make this a very environment where people feel comfortable, whether they've done 100 deals or zero, right? Come on in, we'll help facilitate some networking or talking. And if you just want to just be an introvert and sit in the back and take notes, that's great. We won't bother you at all. Grab a drink on us and just head to the back and take notes and head out of there. It's like you take from it what you need. You know what I mean? So it's a super cool part of everything I do. And again, forever grateful to Jarrett. And we're really excited to see where CLT REI goes this year in 2026.
Yeah, definitely excited to see how that develops with Anthony and you guys up there. Different guests, different topics. Super excited for that. But before we get you out of here, Erik, this has been awesome. What's the best place to connect with you if somebody has a deal they want to be able to send to you? Just have a conversation. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm always around. So we can, if there's a link or something part of this, we can put my Instagram in.
For
I'm
sure.
at Erik with a K, ERIK underscore IFC. And then you just, check out our website, iFundCities.com. Or my email is just ERIK at iFundCities.com. So I'm always around, and please don't hesitate to reach out, even if it is not an active deal that you're looking for funding, right? I've love education. I love teaching. So anytime I can just be a resource to anybody to, again, help them underwrite a deal, be a second set of eyes, look at some comps with them. Like, there is no expectation that we're going to be doing the funding or the loan. It's more of just like, how can I be a resource for you? It truly is important to me to have that aspect of the connection in the community in Charlotte. So if anybody has anything they ever want to reach out on, I'm always available, and we'll find a way in the when we post this to be able to connect with me via email or Instagram.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link all of Erik's information in the podcast description. So, Erik, excited to have you on, man. This has been coming for a while. I've been wanting to get you on. So, yeah, super good information. Thank you so much for being a guest on the episode. So, this has been Chris and Erik on the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.